Hey guys, welcome back to my channel World of Flutter. So today we are going to take a look at the shared preferences package, and if you want to see the implementation of this package using the example given in the examples tab, and if you want to see what's been written in the readme quickly, then please watch this video till the very end. And as for the likes, pop-ins and popularity, we can see that this package is very good and efficient to use, and the publisher is flutter.dev, which means that this is an official package licensed by the BSD3 clause. And the platform on which we can use this is Android, iOS, Linux, macOS, web and Windows. So let's quickly jump into the readme. So what this plugin does, the plugin wraps platform specific persistent storage for simple data, and data may be persisted to disk asynchronously, and there is no guarantee that the writes will be persisted to the disk after returning. So which means that we cannot and we must not use this plugin for storing critical data. Now the supported data types by this plugins is int, double, bool, string and a list of strings. Okay, and here are some examples of how they are writing the data, reading the data and removing an entry. So when you're using shared preferences, you use like key value pairs. So in that case you will have to create a key and you will set a value to it. So it depends what value you're setting, either it's an integer, boolean, double, string or a list of string. Okay, so for setting these values we have methods called setInt, setBool, setDouble, like that, and we are going to call this method on the instance of your shared preference. So here on the top we have created a prefs instance, which is a object of the shared preference class, using the method .getInstance. And when you have created this, then you will do prefs dot setInt, setBool, setDouble, like that, to set the value. So your value will be set to this particular key. Similarly, for reading the data, you will get methods. So getInt, getBool, getDouble, like that. And in this case, you will only need to pass the key, not the value, because you're getting the value and you will be saving it in some variable. And if the value doesn't exist, then it will return a null. And to remove an entry, then in that case, you can use .remove method and you can pass the key, so that your value on that key will be removed. Now we have something called multiple instances. So usually when we use shared preference, and in that case, to look up we use get method, which may be synchronous also, and which uses a cache on the Dart side. Okay, so which is normally updated by set method. So this is the usual implementation. So in order to make a preference lookup via get method synchronous, we use a cache, and that is updated by set methods. But there might be a scenario or multiple scenarios in which the cache will be updated, just not by the set methods. So it might be updated using some external changes. So these are the three situations in which you can face this. First is that when you're using a multiple isolate, so each isolate will have a cache on its own. Okay, its own singleton and its own cache. Second scenario is that when you're using something like a Firebase messaging plugin, which has multiple engine instances. Okay, and third scenario is that when you're modifying the underlying system preference stored through something other than shared preference plugin, like a native code. So in these three scenarios, your cache is updating, but not by the set methods. So what can we do to resolve this? So we can use a method called reload to resolve this. So what reload will do is that it will update your cache to the latest value. Doesn't matter what made the cache change its value, whether it's a set method or an external change. What you will get when you are reading from the cache will be the updated cache value. So for that you will need to use a reload method. Okay, then we have something called migration and prefixes. So by default in shared preference plugin will only read and write preferences that begin with the prefix flutter. Now this is built in, you don't need to do anything in that. So alternatively, shared preference can be configured to use any prefix by adding a call to set prefix. Now the flutter prefix is by default. If you want to set your own prefix, then you can call the set prefix method, but you can only call it before you are instantiating your instances of shared preferences. Now if you already created the object and now you're trying to set prefix, that will fail. Okay, so you need to set it before you're instantiating the objects. So setting the prefix to an empty string will allow access to all the preferences created by even a non-Flutter versions of the app, which means for migration from native app to the Flutter app. Also, if you're setting a value to an empty string, the prefix value, then it might read the values which are not originally stored by shared preference, which means that there will be supported and unsupported data types. So if you face an unsupported data type, in that case your shared preference initialization will fail. So to avoid this kind of situation, you can use an allow list that contains only preferences of supported type, preferences that are supported by your shared preferences. And if you decide to remove the prefix entirely, then you have to you can still access previously created preferences by manually adding the prefix flutter by the beginning as a preference key. And if you want to change your default prefix to a new prefix, then in that case also you have to like manually transform your current preferences, otherwise your old preferences will be inaccessible. And for testing, you can do a mock implementation with the initial values as they have shown here. The storage location by platform is given, like for Android it's shared preference, for iOS it's NS user defaults. That is even also mentioned here. Here you can see. Okay, so for different platforms they have made a table which you can refer. Okay, for web it's local storage, like that for every platform that this plugin supports. Now let's quickly jump into installation. So for installing, you can either run this command or else you can copy this line of code and you can paste it under dependencies in your YAML file and run pubget. So that is what I'm going to do now. This is the basic default Flutter app that we get when we make a new Flutter app. And under dependencies, I'm going to paste this line of code and I'm going to do pubget. Now once you do pubget, you have to like kill your app and run it again. So let's just see what else is there. So you can use this line of import in whichever file you are going to use it. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it in my main.dart because that is where I'm going to use it. Okay. So now you can see in my messages tab, it tells me that I already have shared preferences with me. Now it's been added successfully and I can use it in my project. Now right now this is a green color because of course I'm not using it anywhere. So let's go in the examples tab. Whatever example they have given, I will just copy that same and I'm going to paste it. So I'm going to remove my entire code and I'm going to paste this code. Okay. So I'll just show you what they have done. So this is basically a simple app which is a material app and its home is the shared preference demo. So this my app is a stateless widget, but your shared preference demo is a stateful widget. Okay. So first of all, we need to make an object that I told you using the .get instance. So that is what they have done. And this object we are going to use it as a future, so that's why like we are going to call this using await. So we need it to be a future. Okay, because we are going to wait it for it. And similarly we have made another variable which is of type int, but again it's a future. So let's just like pass this function for now. Let's just not discuss it. Let's directly go in the init state. So in the init state, what they are doing is they are initializing the value of the counter using the prefs object. So they are calling the then function, and in that they are checking that .get int and there is a counter key. Okay, and they are trying to get the value on this key. So once you get the value, it will do a null check and check whether it's a null value. So of course we are not setting it anywhere before init state, so which means this, of course this is a null value. So if it is null, then your value returned will be 0 and the return value will be like stored in this counter variable. Now this counter variable has a 0 value when you go to the init state. I'm just going to run it in the background also. So in the build, you can see we are using a future builder. So what is a future builder? Future builder helps you determine the current state of your future, so that whatever value you're getting, on the basis of that you will be able to change your widgets. So for example, if you don't have the value right now, then you will show a circular progress indicator or something else, and as soon as you get the value from the future back, you will display what needs to be displayed. So in the future builder, for future we are passing the counter which we are fetching. We are fetching the data, and we we can also do this thing here, like fetching the data in the future itself, but that we should not do because that will create issues for us later on. So that's why we usually fetch the data outside of the future builder, because that will create a loop for us. Okay, because every time future builder will rebuild, and every time this future data fetching will restart. So in that case it will always be a loop. That's why we like fetch it somewhere else, like in the widget lifecycle, different methods we have: init state, did change dependency, did update dependency. So in there we can do that. So here I am doing that same thing in the init state. So I'm passing the counter in the future, and in the builder we are of course having a context and a snapshot. So in the snapshot we are always checking connection.state. So they have used a switch case, and in case with none and waiting, we are going to show a circular progress indicator, or else if it's done or active, Then we are going to check if the snapshot has error. If it does has error, then it will return a text widget. Otherwise it will return this different text widget that will say button tap. So right now we didn't saw any circular progress indicator, probably because this was way too fast for us to even see on the screen. So directly it went to the done, and since it doesn't have any error, this particular widget has been rendered on the screen. So button tap 0 times. Why 0? Because here your value was 0, because this was null when you did a get int. Okay, it's still null. Your 0 is in this particular variable. This is different from the key that you have. Okay, so the value on the key is still null, but your variable has 0. That's why it's showing 0. Okay, and now let's discuss this particular method that we are actually calling on tap of the floating action button. So this right here. So if I tap on this, it will go to button tapped 1 time. If I tap again, button tap 2 times. Now how is this happening? So it's calling this method increment counter, and increment counter is again making a local variable prefs that will do an await on the prefs, which is a future. So it will call, it will get the object, and again they have made a local variable which is counter, and they are using get int. So right now, even after init state and all that, the value at the key counter is still null. So again it's checking null. If it's null, then it's assigning 0. So it's 0, 0 plus 1 is 1. So the counter local variable will now have the value of 1, and in the set state they are setting the value this counter inside our key. Okay, and then using the then method they are returning that same counter back to the other variable that we made. So now the value is 1, so it's getting 1 return. Now again if I click on the increment counter like I just did, it became 2, because when you set the int, now the set int was 1. So when you do again get int, then this value will be 1, and now of course it's not null, so 1 plus 1 is 2. Then again your return counter will be stored here, and future on set state your build method will run again, future builder will run again, and your counter will display 2. So that is how it's working. Okay, so you can, using the prefs, you can set int, you can get int, you can do all that using the shared preference. So generally we use shared preference when we are dealing with username and ID passwords like that, because that data is like, if it's very critical then you must not use it, of course. But if it's a small app or it's a very constricted, restricted user target audience, then in that case you can use that. Okay, and if you're making a demo app or something like that, then also you can use shared preferences. Okay, so that was all about the shared preference plugin. And if you like this video, please like, share, subscribe. And if you want me to cover a certain topic in Flutter or a certain video in Flutter of a package, then please write in the comment section. I will make a video on those as well. And thank you so much. I'll see you guys in my next video.